Hello and welcome everyone to another episode of the Ultimate Supply Chain podcast. I'm Louise Barber, Global Head of Marketing here at DHL Supply Chain, and I'm your host for this series. I am delighted today to be joined by my colleague Claudius Christmas Jr., who's VP Global HR Transformation and Digitalization. And we're going to be talking about the changing face of the workplace in the supply chain industry. Hi, Claudius. Welcome to the podcast.
Hi, Lou. Thanks for having me.
Not at all. Listen, before we kick off, we always like to know our guest stories. So can you just tell us, how did you end up in the supply chain world?
I guess it's a circuitous path that I've taken. So I tell you, from a young age, I was pretty intrigued by technology, often with toys. I thought it was fun and cool, and I always wanted to know how it worked. As I grew a bit older, I started to think about how do you help other people benefit from technology and make things easier for them. My undergraduate studies, I was sure I wanted to do something with computers, but I didn't know whether I wanted to do something more technical with computers or more functional. And
Right.
one of the things that was true, I think, of my upbringing is that I moved around a lot, and I had to meet
Okay.
people quickly and make friends quickly. So I really liked the people side of things. So I decided to go into management information systems as my undergraduate course of study.
Right.
And I focused a lot on accounting and finance during that time too, because I quite enjoyed math. So I got my first role as an internal auditor working in finance for a company, manufacturing company. And that role gave me a lot of broad experience across functional and manufacturing process landscapes. And then I moved to work on projects in subsequent roles that often had to do with implementing business systems for the company,
Right.
dealing with the technical setup, the application business, as well as the change management associated with that. And I moved then between roles, often, with working with functions like HR, sales, finance, but always in a business that had a heavy supply chain component. So ultimately, I ended up here at DHL. I'm working in a supply chain division, starting off in IT and then ending up here in HR for the second time.
Wow. Do you know, you and I have known each other for a couple of years. I did not know that yours was a predominantly IT background and it just happens to be applied to HR. So have you been in HR for long then? You say you've been in sales and other places. Has the HR kind of core of your role been a thing for a while at DHL Supply Chain?
For a DHL supply chain, it's going on 10 years that I've been in HR, but I have been in HR before for
Right.
about 2.5. And in between being in HR in my last company and being in HR here, I was IT for HR.
Okay. Well, I suppose in an organization like ours where, people are absolutely at the heart of everything we do, it makes perfect sense. And one of the things that we want to focus on today are the main changes in how technology is shaping communication, collaboration, and what the future holds. So let's start by really diving into that future of work. How does this whole future of work concept relate to your experiences in your role? What changes have you seen since you've been in supply chain?
First, like everyone else, I have experienced the changing nature of work since early in my career. I've seen significant moves of manual work to automation and elimination of repetitive work.
Right.
And in technology, I've also seen the shift in terms of how we work, moving away from centralized core teams that work together to globally distributed teams working together to deliver projects and support systems. From my perspective, it's driven the need for new skills to work in that type of environment. We often go through our undergraduate studies in university working in teams on projects where we're all located together. That's
Mm-hmm.
not the world that we're in. So that has been a big change over my working career. And
For
getting
sure.
used to that has required, as I said, new skills, largely working in this distributed environment, establishing relationships with people that are not right next to us and close by. And that's made us, like I said, have to work a bit differently. I saw that expand even much faster during COVID in
Yeah.
my time here within supply chain, where we had to work in a distributed environment and functions and groups that weren't used to doing that. And we proved to ourselves that we actually could do it because we had to. And now it's all digitalization. We talk about automation and robotics, and that's impacting my area quite a bit in my current role. My team drives this for the HR function. And we
Right.
also use it in what we do and how we work, deploying our products and services that we provide to employees and managers in the business.
So, getting into that a bit, Claudius, is your primary role about supply chain or about HR for supply chain? Are you providing new solutions for the HR part of it, or the way we use digitalization in the supply chain for our customers?
It's heavily focused on our employees within supply chain.
Okay.
What we find, though, is the types of needs and expectations that our employees have about their experience at work, their experience using different services, be it HR or any other function, um,
Hmm.
have good parallels to what we see, I think, from customers as well. I think in our day to day lives, we expect things to get easy. We expect them to get better, and technology is infused in that. As people come into the workforce and the workplace, they expect the workplace to be a bit more like their personal lives and the types of experiences they have with products and services there.
Yeah, that's true, isn't it? People don't leave their personality in their real world at the door anymore. And I think when you're working at home, your lives were, because of COVID, I guess, crashed together rather than that evolution that we've seen, in other aspects of life. Um, how much time do you spend with? Do you get to spend time with our customers? That's a better question. Are you implementing things that are useful to our customers, and do you get to share them through networking, that sort of thing?
Well, I don't personally spend a lot of time with our direct customers. One of the things that I do enjoy doing is going out and visiting our operations and
Right.
working with the colleagues and listening to the colleagues that do interact more directly with our customers to understand their experience in our operations, the expectations our customers have on us, the parts of their job that are challenging in terms of meeting those customer expectations, and their thoughts and ideas about the HR services that we provide and what would or could make their jobs easier, so that as they're at work they're able to focus more on what the customers need of us and less worry or focus about some administration or things that they need from an HR perspective. We want to make that easy, quick, and efficient so that they can do it as and when they need to, but not have it be the dominant part of their day-to-day operations. We want people to focus on the customers and understanding those demands and the parts of the ways of working that we have at DHL that might make that challenging. Is quite useful to me.
So, what do you hear from our colleagues then? What sort of feedback do you get with some of the improvements that you've input?
It's really good feedback that we've gotten. Interesting from my perspective is as we've embarked on this digitalization journey, we as a global HR leadership team have had plenty of discussions around what types of changes might be coming, our readiness for it, the need to focus on the change management to land these bits successfully. We've had thoughts on where it will and won't work, what would make things better, and what might be challenging. And I think the interesting part for me, Lou, is that as I've gone to the operations and talked to the managers of the operations and the people working in the operations, what we find is at times their willingness and interest in change is different than we might have assumed. And
Mm.
so while we might have deployed a new solution, it helps them better collaborate with colleagues that work at a nearby site, or solutions that help them more effectively be aware of the hours they're scheduled to work, to ask for any absence time, to take advantage of any discounts or special offerings that we have as part of their employment. Those types of things we might not have known how they would be received. We hear really good feedback from our colleagues about the accessibility of that, the ability to interact and collaborate with others, and they like it. And there are
Yeah.
areas as well where we talk to our operations leaders that are managing colleagues, and we want to get feedback as well from them on the HR services that we've deployed that help them do that better. We've strived to put information about their teams in their hands. We've strived to give them more direct control over managing that type of information and making updates in a more efficient way. And where that could be perceived at times as shifting the burden of the HR administration to our operations, it really hasn't been received that way, and that's not been the intent of it. What we've tried to do is make the processes they were already following to communicate changes, the need for change, and to orchestrate those more efficient and more modern through the use of apps and self-service. And the feedback on that has been really quite positive in most of our countries.
That's really good to hear. And I hear what you say. You say people talk about shift of administrative burden, but if you shift it into something that becomes part of our DNA, it's not a burden anymore. It is part of our DNA, and it just becomes something you naturally do. So I'm with you. The more we can do to make this, to make our communications interactive, to make digital communication the first thing we do, digital by default, but for communication, so much the better, in my opinion. And what you were just saying about, we are very lucky in DHL. Some of the benefits that are available to us. I was on the benefits app with a new starter this morning. Actually, this is going to sound like I'm making it up. I'm not. New starter this morning. We went through the benefits app, and he was saying to me that he got a couple of notifications at the weekend. He was asking whether or not it's AI driven because he happened to be at a shopping centre and he got a ping to say we've got a discount here.
I
And he's
love
like, is that AI or is that actually was that a just a happy coincidence? So obviously, either way, I claimed it was AI, and he was.
it. It's fantastic. And that topic is all the rage in the news media today. Everybody talks about it, and everywhere you look, what you read, what you see, what you hear, something AI is involved. So whether that was AI or not, I don't know, but I'm sure in the future AI will have something to do with it if it didn't already today.
Yeah, and our team and your team, my team in marketing, your team in HR communications, we have the same challenges, we have the same excitement in our world. When we're able to really understand some insight and apply that to a customer at just the right time, having seen just the right needs, then it's magic. If you get it slightly wrong, it's intrusive and it can feel a little bit big brother. So, what are you guys doing to think about the insight that drives our solutions for colleagues?
It's funny that you asked that because one of the key things about the insights is they're only as good as the data that they're based on.
For
And
sure.
one of the key things we've got to balance here is using data to provide people more personalized experience versus being intrusive with it. And
Yeah.
I think what you said is really hits the nail on the head. When it hits you and it's relevant and it's at the right time in the right place, you find value in it. If it's wrong and not quite, you find it intrusive. We've got
Yeah.
to make sure that we're asking our colleagues the right questions and that we're capturing that type of information in terms of their response, their interest, and so forth in a way that allows us to get accurate and meaningful insights so that we can provide these types of kind of targeted experiences that they perceive as a positive versus the ones that are a little off track. And in all honesty, I think before digitalization, um, our organization, many organizations struggle with data.
Mm.
Having the right data, having it in the right format, having it in the right place, and being able to glean insights from it. And digitalization over the last 5 or 6 years has really come on in a way that has created much greater awareness about the importance of data, the
Mm.
need to have it in a more standardized and consistent fashion so that we can gain insights from that. And then, really, the technologies that have come on to deal with these mass volumes of data and to find the needles in the haystack very efficiently. Those coupled with the data itself are giving us a better pathway to there's more accurate and meaningful personalized experiences. So in my area, one of the things that we do is we design our HR processes and services so that people find them easy to use.
Hmm.
Also, that we collect not only carries out the process, but provides us the insights to bring more value add to our employee experience at work.
That's really good. And I know we were a bit ahead perhaps of the curve in marketing. So we have a number of individual tools that serve different channels. I know from your perspective, you've got a number of different tools that support us with things like recruitment, and those are driven by our regions. Because we were quick, does it mean that it's harder to aggregate the data? Um, but one of the things we find is you can't put all of the data together. So we've had to build a data warehouse to pull the data from all those different sources. You have data that sits in a number of different repositories based on the region that our colleagues are in. So is that a hindrance to understanding insights at scale, or have you found a way around it?
It can be a hindrance. I think one of the things that we did well was that before we put in our recruiting systems, we had already standardized our recruiting processes in terms of what we expected them to be.
Mm.
What are the steps that need to take place? What's the order? Who should be involved? Um,
Oh, nice.
and what kind of data should we be capturing at each of those steps to
Right.
facilitate an efficient process that doesn't require people to provide the same data twice or to go back and make corrections after they start? So we started with a process design that was standardized. And even though our regions drove the implementation of their respective recruiting systems, they did leverage those standard processes. And while that wasn't perfect, it was really very good, good enough to allow us to get meaningful recruiting insights from all of those different recruiting systems in a consolidated way. So there was a bit more effort involved than if we had fewer systems and if we had put it in at the same time as designing the process. But the pace that we needed to undergo at that time didn't allow for us to do it in the ideal way. Nevertheless,
Right.
by dealing with the process and the data designs first and then setting the systems up to match that, I think we minimize the amount of additional effort required to get the insights from each of those and kind of get a consolidated view for the division.
Nice. And what's your approach? Because we tend to, this is fascinating actually. When I think about the similarities between your world and mine, there's stuff we can learn from each other for sure. Um, what's your approach? We tend to look at persona. We tend to look at customer persona in the buying journey and then come up with a customer journey for that persona. Do you do the same with colleagues?
We do. I think the order may be a little bit different. So when we think about our HR processes, I always say that the cost of entry is the process must be effective. It has to work,
Mhm.
right? We want it to be easy to use as well. We want it to be convenient, but first it has to work, right? So we
Right.
focus first on designing a process that works. And that may not consider each individual persona and preference in terms of how they experience the process, but we get that kind of foundational platform put in place. Then we optimize. And you see this with digitalization today. When we first started our journey of digitalization back in 2019, 2020, um, everything that we had to do with HR related systems, people started to call digitalization.
Right.
I would contend that we had been doing those things for 10, 20, 30 years before digitalization was a thing. It wasn't digitalization, it was implementing systems to automate processes. What we then saw was the advent of these new solutions that weren't doing the foundational process, right? So it wasn't running a payroll, it wasn't doing your core HR, it wasn't doing the recruiting. It was sitting on top of those systems that do that and making the experience better for the various personas using those processes. And so that's
Got
what
it.
we find ourselves doing now. So the personas are important, but what we've done is define the processes for effectiveness first, and then come back to digitalize those processes and make the experience better for the various personas, given the characteristics of their work, their role, the nature of how they experience DHL.
Do you find that adoption of AI, Gen AI, those sort of tools, is adoption different by persona? Is it different by age? Is it different by region? What is it that is driving adoption? Which ones are into it? Which ones are less into it?
It is different. And I would tell you that, the adoption of Gen AI and these kind of newer digitalization technologies, um, the adoption approach isn't really any different than for technologies that came before. We have a diverse workforce, and
Mhm.
not everyone is as comfortable with or used to technology as kind of the core way that they interact in their personal lives at home or at work and that they experience life. Others, who have come up in a time where technology is more pervasive and more powerful are far more comfortable with it. And so when we look
Right.
across our entire workforce, whether we're rolling out a traditional system to automate a process, the change management associated with that, when you look at the various populations that we need to kind of bring along and get on board, the expectations and their um, level of acceptance or comfort is very similar. You can break them into the same groups. And you see that now with Gen AI and robotics and so forth.
Mm.
It tends to be folks earlier in their careers, just joining the workforce. They have grown up with technology from the time they were small children, right? And so their comfort and their confidence and their ability to intuitively figure out and understand how to use these things is much better than perhaps folks who weren't. having that same experience during their upbringing in their career. So
A little
we
bit
have
worried
to
about
design.
breaking it.
Yes, they're worried about breaking it. So we have to design with everybody in mind. And that means making sure that, we take care of the needs of people who aren't quite as comfortable and ensure that we make it as easy as possible. We provide the right training and support. But we also have to design for the future, right? And
Mm.
so what we're seeing more and more is people are comfortable and they expect their workplace and the experiences they have at work to mirror those personal experiences that they have outside of work where technology is quite pervasive and they're very comfortable using it. So yeah, we see the different groups respond to Gen AI and robotics the same as we've seen older technologies being deployed have different responses from these groups as well.
So I can see how the introduction of technology, digitalization, all of that new shiny stuff, I can see how that has changed the way we all work on a daily basis. What is it going to do for the future of logistics? If you think about when I joined logistics, I was thinking, well, that's people who drive trucks and people who work in warehouses. And for sure it is. But what was in my mind when I joined and the reality of the situation is a million miles apart. Where is the future going to go with all of this, Claudius?
It is hard to tell because if you think back 5 years, you would have never said the future would be where we are today.
Exactly.
Um,
Exactly.
I'm used to roles where we're thinking about the future and we're trying to plan for that, and we're often doing 5 year roadmaps. I think 5 years as a time horizon now is far too long. We're better positioned to think about 3 years, and we would be lucky to get 3 years from now, right? Um,
Yeah.
what I can tell you is these technologies and the impact that they're having. It's not just because some of these technologies are really cool, and I would tell you I think they're really cool. But that is not a good reason for businesses to go and put these technologies in place. They have to do something that helps the business be more successful. And we think first about our customers. What is it that our
Hmm.
customers are looking for from us? What is our ability to deliver on those expectations? What do we need to improve our ability to do that? How can we do that as well as drive profitability for us and them more effectively? And these technologies are helping us do that in ways that we couldn't before. I think about robotics in our operations. Those are helping us in a number of ways with work that was kind of very manual, very repetitive. And in large parts, for a lot of our colleagues, the type of work we're deploying the technologies to do is work that they didn't particularly want to do in the first place. It was
Yeah, for sure.
difficult. It wasn't the most engaging. It was very repetitive. And so, the automation is helping us deploy technologies that take some of that off of the plate of the employees, making the job more fulfilling, but it also provides reliability and repeatability in terms of consistency of the process, one of the things that our customers expect of us. And the question you asked me earlier about the pace of rolling out our recruiting systems and doing that region by region and whether that impacted our ability to kind of get a global set of insights, we run into the same challenges with our operations, where these operations have come up over different periods of time and organically some of them work very differently even for the same
Sure.
customer. And so our customers experience a different DHL depending on what part of the world their operation is in. And some of this automation is also helping us to bring some greater consistency to their experience and our ways of working there too. So I would tell you in the future, I expect to see us continue to smartly deploy automation in ways that improve our productivity, the consistency, and better meet the needs of our customers, but also continue to think about the levels of engagement that our colleagues have working in our operations and how we can make things better for them. Um, One of the key benefits behind that is driving greater retention. So people working for us, enjoying their jobs, enjoying the work experience, and staying with us longer. That benefits us. It benefits our customers who have long-term contracts with us. And when they can rely on us for colleagues that understand the nature of their business and run their operations in a way that helps ensure they're successful, we're more likely to get renewed business and more satisfied customers.
It all sounds quite positive. Do you see a downside with any of it?
Yes, I see there are plenty of risks. I wouldn't really call them downsides. I think
Fair
there are
enough.
risks. And in my view, Lou, as we listen to the news media about these technologies and we hear some experts or perceived experts talk about them, there is a tendency to focus on the most extreme. The most
Hmm.
extreme being the benefits that are possible. This is going to be the beginning and the end of a new way of working, a new world we've never seen before. And then you see the
Yeah,
extremes where this technology stands to end humanity as we know it.
it's going to
I
take over the
believe
world.
exactly. I believe that the truth, as typical, lies somewhere in the middle. And we have had new technologies come online over many years, and we've managed to address the risks associated with those and the benefits associated with those in a way that allows us to move forward and to gain more benefits than risk. With AI, we have to be equally responsible here. I think it's very new, and I don't discount the fact that there are real risks, but I also think that the benefits are incredible as well. The
Mm.
possibilities there are amazing. So I think, as society, we have to come together and figure out how do we do this stuff in a responsible way. But I think, ongoing, we are going to continue to see these technologies deployed because people do clearly see the benefits behind them. And, we've got to kind of balance that with controlling the risk effectively.
Yeah, I think you're dead right there, Claudius. I think, without doubt, technology can really help from a skill perspective, but I still think there's a long way to go for technology to close that kind of heart side, the
Hmm.
emotional intelligence that you only get with a human being. So, I hear that people are using AI to screen CVs. Um, I have to say I haven't. I'm not aware that I have. I always get a shortlist from my HR partners, but my HR shortlist is sufficiently long for me to think that they're not using anything, to screen that with technology. Um, but you still know when you look into somebody's eyes, you still know during the course of a conversation whether or not they can do the role and whether or not you're going to be able to work together. Do you see a time when there's an alternative for that human intelligence, that emotional intelligence?
I don't see it. I don't. I think, our the way we experience life is through interaction with others.
Yeah.
And you think about these technologies, and one thing is true in all cases: the technology came from humans, right? We've done something to create this technology, so it is no smarter than we are.
Mm,
And we continue to learn, grow, and evolve. And the technology can't do that on its own. Yes, it can gain insights that we might have missed, but the kind of creativity, the ability to kind of grow and evolve and change in meaningful ways, still is a human thing. When we think about, the example that you gave around AI screening CVs, AI is in no position to make a decision as to
mm,
whether or not person A is potentially better hire than person B. Um, and I think the human part of that will take in and consider factors that may not be apparent in the data that's available to AI, and we can't miss out on that. Uh, so I think there will continue to be a human element to it. I think, as I said, our experience in life is through connections and interactions with others. And I think not having that and simply relying on technology would be a much less fulfilling life experience than any of us would expect. But I also would tell you, as I said
yeah.
earlier, that technology is as smart as its creators. And we all know that we
Yeah.
don't know everything. We continue to learn and grow. And so we need that human experience to continue to drive the technology in directions that benefit all of us.
Isn't it fascinating when you visit one of our warehouses, how our colleagues who interact with robotics personify the robotics, personalize the robotics. So, we give them names.
Yeah.
We have our favorite bot to work with.
Yeah.
And when I was on Chat GPT this morning, I won't tell you what I was chatting, but I was on Chat GPT this morning, and I always start my chats by saying, "Good morning, Chat. How are you? This is a piece of technology, and I'm talking to it like it's a colleague." Um, so I'm with you. I think there'll never be one can never replace the other.
Yeah.
Because I think as human beings, we always want to interact with something in a human way, even if the thing that we're interacting with isn't human.
Yeah, yeah. And I think, this gets to one of the risks that I mentioned earlier. Um, you take a look at what has happened with Gen AI and
Hmm.
all of the kind of supposed AI that we had before Gen AI came onto the scene publicly in November of 2022.
Yeah.
This is a totally different game. And the key driver for the difference is it feels more natural, right? It feels more
That's
human,
right, actually.
right?
That's the thing. Yeah.
And what we had before with the smart speakers and so forth, those were exciting at the time, but their
Yeah.
limitations were clear. When we interact with, Alexa, etc.,
Siri. Yeah, yeah,
these things, you can tell they're not human, right? They
yeah.
have a little bit of human flair in certain cases, but they're clearly not human. When you interact with Gen AI, the way that it talks to you could lead you to feel like you're talking with a human, right? And
Yeah.
the way that this has been trained, it has a bit more emotional intelligence to it, or at least it feels that way, where it can feel
Yeah.
like it's a human that you're interacting with. We do have to kind of think about how do we do this in a way that, again, has more benefits than costs, and risks associated with it, because it isn't human, right? And as I
Yeah.
said, these things are as smart as the data that's been used to train them and the people that have provided that data. And that is not the totality of our world experience. So we've got to be careful with that. We don't want to create, these connections and dependencies on AI as though it were human. I think that certainly would pose a challenge longer term to our ability to interact with real humans properly and in an engaging way, and to get the satisfaction out of life that we all typically aspire to.
So, what does all this mean for recruitment? Does this mean we need to recruit different people into our world of logistics? And what does it mean for training? How are we preparing people for the future?
So I would tell you it doesn't mean we need to recruit different people. It means we need to recruit for different skills, right? So speaking of what we did earlier about AI deciding, who should be hired, and I said it is not appropriate for that, and it's
Hmm.
really not trustworthy to be able to do that. There's more than the data that it has available to make that decision that humans can pick up on. We have to then shift our focus a little bit more to skills and capabilities that allow people to adapt and to work in these
Hmm.
quick changing environments where technology is a part of the work experience that they have. And we have to make sure that the skills that are needed for this human part of the work experience are more prominent. Because where we have technology doing some of the more routine pieces that aren't quite as dependent on human interaction, we need to make sure that we cater for the human experience. We're working with colleagues that are human beings, right?
Hmm.
We're working with customers that are human beings. And so we need to make sure that the engagement and the interactions that we have with them reflect the fact that, we understand their needs, their emotions, their priorities, etc. And nothing can do that better than humans. There are kind of changing factors and situations that might drive how we react to the same stimulus. Humans are much better at picking up on that and being able to respond effectively. So our connections, our business success is often really has a strong component of human relationships that are part of that. We've got to make sure we're hiring for skills that allow us to continue to do that successfully. When it comes to training, the training as well has to be for some of these soft skills as well as the technology and adaptation skills that persist in our environment. So from a leadership perspective, I'm quite proud of what we do in our certified program as we train our frontline supervisors to think about how they lead their teams, focusing on the human component of managing people,
Hmm.
understanding your people, getting to know your people, ensuring that their basic needs are being met, ensuring that we're providing respect and dignity and growth and development, all of those things that make for an engaging work experience. We're training our supervisors to focus on that, not just how
Hmm.
do you move boxes properly from point A to point B, or get shipments out the door quickly. It has to be more than that to provide the experience that people look forward to coming to work and having. And again, a happy workforce will provide better customer service, and we'll be able to engage our customers in ways that lead to renewed business and acquisition of business. So the skills are what we have to focus on differently. It's not necessarily the people. And
Sure.
here again, understanding the level of skill a person has, the proficiency, the gaps, and so forth. This is a bit more emotional intelligence that I think humans are the best judge of.
Yeah, that makes perfect sense. If you were a betting guy, what's next? We've seen Gen AI. None of us saw that coming, I don't think. In terms of, Chat GPT wasn't here, then suddenly it was. What's next, do you think, Claudius?
So I see this Gen AI as this kind of, you know, significant inflection point in terms of our technology capability. As I said, it feels to many of us that it came out of nowhere. It did
Hmm.
not. It was simmering behind the scenes for quite some while before a product like this or capability like this could be deployed to the masses. And it is in its early stages. Take a look at how impressed we already are with it, right? The potential is massive. And one of the things that we see is that Gen AI didn't just come out and stay still. We have
Mm.
seen one or two improvements each year from these different technology companies that are producing these Gen AI chatbots, and they're meaningful improvements. We started with OpenAI's ChatGPT 3.5, and then we saw 4.0. We've seen Google come out with Gemini. We've seen Anthropic come out with Claude. And all of these have their strengths and continue to build models that improve on their capabilities very quickly. And
Yeah.
so when you say what's next, it's really hard to tell, but I'll tell you what I would expect. I expect these kind of basic chatbot capabilities we see to give way a little bit to true use cases and examples of where it's been applied well to help make a significant improvement in the way that we do business, generate products and services. I think in the field of healthcare and medicine, I
Yeah.
think there is potential that is tremendous there for us to
Definitely.
see the data analytics and Gen AI be able to help make leaps and bounds progress on some of these long-standing challenges with like cancer drugs and so forth that we've simply not seen before. I
Mm.
expect to see Gen AI capabilities infused in more of the products and services that we already use. So your new hire talked about the app that suggested the benefits, the discount when he was at a particular location. I expect to see Gen AI infused into things like that.
Mm.
Again, create a little bit more of a human experience. I expect to see us move from chatbots to digital assistants, right? Where
Yeah.
it's not just you come to it and you chat, but it is kind of helping you get your work done and giving you prompts on things that are
It's
relevant
more
to today's
proactive.
time. Yes. So I
Yeah.
expect to see it get more infused into the things that we already use in our ways of working as the most near term outcome. Beyond that, I'm not entirely sure. Again, Gen AI came out of nowhere from my perspective, and it's making quite a big splash. But it really gets to moving past the hype of the splash and the surprise and the experience that we're having with this as a first go to thinking about how do you apply this most effectively to deliver productivity improvements in people's experience with products and services the company put out, people's improvements in experience at their workplace. How do you infuse it into what we already do to make that experience better? And that's true digitalization from my perspective, making the experience people have with the technology better.
And it's such excitement that will come with this. I was listening to a podcast at the weekend, and it was somebody talking about the revolutionary discoveries they've made around cancer drugs, actually. And they were saying this is less of a challenge from a medical perspective and more of a challenge from a data perspective, because it's only having enough data that is allowing them to do some sort of prediction into the future and how the cancers or how different diseases might develop. And this guy was saying, it's having enough data and being able to analyze that data at speed and at scale that we can now do. The actual treatments probably won't be any different, but the application of them and the our ability to prescribe for them will be the thing that is that much quicker.
I
Um,
completely agree. I think the insights that you can get from the data, we have significantly improved our ability to look at large volumes of data and get meaningful and relevant insights where we've struggled to do that before. And this for me is kind of the key, right? So you talked about, in terms of the medications and so forth, those things will, may continue to be the same. But one of the things I was already seeing, in a company I worked for previously, was this idea of personalized medication for some of these
Yeah.
more, challenging diseases. And the
Yeah.
personalization of that, looking at how have we medicated others with those same diseases and the same characteristics that the patient currently has, and gaining insights that we perhaps missed before,
Mm.
to more finely target and tune the prescription so that it has more benefit than negatives associated with that as well, and preferably as well more efficacy that is more effective in addressing the particular ailment. I think the potential there is great, but not only is it having the data, it is the challenge has been being able to gain the appropriate insights from those data. And I do
Definitely.
think that AI, analytics, machine learning, deep learning, and so forth, all of that's kind of bundled together in this, the Gen AI technologies. This stands to open a pretty significant door for progress for us on that.
And again, it's a great example of where you've got technology working in collaboration with human spirit and human judgment. Because no matter how fast that data can be analysed, it still takes somebody with the skills and judgment to make a call as to how it's applied to an individual or to a group of individuals.
That's an important point, and it's one of the things that I thought about as we were coming into this discussion. It's really around kind of the ethics of this technology as well. And I hear and see a lot about the ethics of AI, and it gets
Mm.
back to what we were discussing before, where the AI might open the door for you to do certain things, but they may not be the right things to do.
To
When we
do,
think
for
about our
sure.
values and our responsibility as a society to each other, trying to do no harm, we have to make a judgment call. And this, again, is another example of something I would never want to leave to AI to do, just like we talked about hiring decisions.
Yeah.
The judgment needs to be human, and it needs to consider more than just what the data tell us. There are values, and beliefs that are quite important to us as well, and responsibilities that we have to each other living in a civilized society, where we try to take care and not do harm. So I think it's this combination of people and technology that's the future. It will continue to be. I think what
Mm.
we're dealing with now is just significant advances in technology that give us opportunities for greater success on long-standing challenges than we've seen in the past, and opportunities for innovation. For me, that is one of the things that's most exciting. I love solving problems, and where we have technologies that give us the ability to think about things differently and apply solutions differently, you still need that creativity to identify where the difference is needed or where the difference might make an impact. I still think this is a largely a human thing. Where we have done it before, we can teach and train the AI that we've
Yeah.
done it before, but the first time doing it is often a very human thing. So
Yeah.
I think this balance between humans and technology will continue to be important.
Yeah, I think you're right. And I think, is the difference between a rules based decision and a judgment or a belief based decision. And, as clever as the technology is, I think it's got a little way to go until you get to judgment and belief.
Yeah, and I think as we see now, we're thrilled and excited with the potential of Gen AI, but one of the realities, and people who are a little bit more skeptical will often point this out, is it's not always right, right?
Yeah.
And
Yeah.
so I can tell you from firsthand experience using it, there have been plenty of times where it comes across very assertive and clear as though this is fact. But
Yeah.
the knowledge that I have tells me that's not true. And when you tell it that part there is wrong, it says, "Oh, I'm sorry, I made a mistake," and it tries
It's
again.
very apologetic, isn't
Right?
it?
It
It
is
comes
right.
off
That
very, yeah.
human piece gets trained into it, right? So it is not always right. And this here
Yeah.
again is where again the human experience needs to come into this and help make sure that this thing is on the right track.
Claudius, thanks so much for making the time to speak to us today. I certainly got loads out of our conversation, and I'm sure our audience will too. I'd love it if you could come and speak to my marketing team at some point, because I definitely missed the deep similarities between what you're doing and what we're doing. So it'd be great if we could work on that together.
Thanks so much, Lou. I really enjoyed it today, and I would be delighted to speak with your marketing team anytime. Let's set it up.
Fantastic. Thank you so much for listening, whether you're on our website, you're on Spotify or on YouTube. Please stay tuned for the next episode, and remember, share your thoughts by leaving a review or comment, and look out for the next Supply Chain podcast. Thanks, everyone.